Talking to Tom Peters today, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, wherever the heck you are, whenever you're listening. This is Phil Gerbyshak talking to the one and only Tom Peters today. Tom is a leading business management guru and founder of the Tom Peters Company. He continues to be in constant demand for lectures and seminars. And in 2017, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award from Thinkers 50 and the Jack Covert Award for contribution to the business book industry from 800 CEO Read. Now, those are really cool, but my favorite thing about Tom is quite a few years ago, he co-authored In Search of Excellence with Robert H. Waterman Jr., often cited as among the best business books ever written. I've been following Tom for a long time. His new book is called The Excellence Dividend, and we're excited to talk today about that book and about all things Tom Peters. So good morning, Tom. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Couldn't be better. I've got to tell you about that Thinkers 50 award.
Yeah.
Lifetime Achievement Award. It was given in London, and I'm an incredible Monty Python fan. And so I brought a T-shirt with me. I wish I had it now, and I would show it off. And I said, well, I know what this was a T-shirt that I got after a Monty Python show. I said, I know exactly what a Lifetime Achievement Award means. I pulled up the T-shirt and it said in huge print, "Not dead yet."
That's awesome.
Got a laugh out of a bunch of stiffs who were wearing black ties. What can I tell you?
That's awesome. Well, that's
the situation. I hate black tie. And what I really hate is, well, yeah, but everybody's wife loves them when they put black tie on. It's one of the biggest debates or problems I have with my dearly beloved spouse. I despise the stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes we just got a happy wife, happy life it, right?
Absolutely. And I can't tie a bow tie. I am Mr. Clip-On. Yeah. I was buying a suit one time, and the guy who sold it to me was really a lovely guy, or buying replacement stuff. And I, bought a clip-on tie. This happened to be in Boston. And he said, look, that's awful. He said, if you're going to something local in Boston, you come by the shop and I will tie your tie for you, which unfortunately I never did, but he did have a point.
That's funny. So many years ago, Tom, I was teasing my dad about how clip-on ties are for losers. And then he took his tie off and it was a clip-on.
Yeah.
Boy, did I feel about this big.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's funny. So cool. So I have to say, I worked with 800 CEO Read for a long while. I'm huge fans of them. And for you to get the Jack Covert Award, I have to say, Tom, there's nobody on the planet that's more deserving of that. So who was there? I mean, what would talk to us a little bit about that experience?
Well, it was great fun. Let's put it this way, since you know that world. We had everybody who you can imagine in book publishing. And publishers are publishers. And they were giving out awards, lots of awards. They were more kind to me. Nobody would shut up. I mean, literally everybody continued to sip on their drink, continued to talk at the top of their voice. And the mistress of ceremonies, who owns Schwartz Books, where this whole thing is based, and she kept saying, I'm giving an important award. Will you please put your drink down and shut up? But the main thing, but that also says something good. Everybody had fun. It was fabulous. The other part of it, which you are probably aware of with the background with those guys, is Jack and I have a long, long, long love affair. We go back to before 800 CEO Read was even I love independent bookstores. I mean, I love Barnes & Noble, and anybody who will sell my book is my best friend on earth. But my ex-wife owned started an independent bookstore in Palo Alto. And so I've always had a sweet spot in my heart for indies. And I went up to Milwaukee and went to Schwartz Books long ago. And then Jack and I had this great relationship. And the cool thing, this is my ego talking. The cool thing about getting the award was they had never given one to an author. It had gone to publishers, agents, and to various others, very deserving people in the industry. But I was the first author, and so that made it even doubly or triply flattering. But we all had a great time. Incidentally, damn, I'm not going to get the title right. One of the people who was there was my old friend, Sally Helgeson. And
Yes.
Sally and Marshall Goldsmith have a book coming out this week, which is really terrific, and they're a great pair. And if I, look down and do Google, I could tell you the name, and I should know the name. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about my book. I'm here to pitch. So, book, not true. It's a great book.
Yeah, it's How Women Rise is their new
Brilliant.
book, Boring at Home, paying attention. So Sally Helgerson and Marshall Goldsmith, fantastic people. So thank you, Tom, for mentioning them. They're good people too. So for sure. So Tom, so you've taken a little sabbatical from writing books. You haven't written a book for a few years. So What finally got you fired up to write a new book, to write the Excellence Dividend?
Well, two things. One of them is my first management job, which happened to be in the U.S. Navy in Vietnam, was in 1966. And that means that 2016 was the 50th anniversary of that job.
Wow.
And the first title, the working title of the book, was The Works. And it really was an effort not to do a memoir, but just to talk about the big ideas that started actually in Vietnam, because I had this incredible commanding officer who took care of the troops, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a 50, you could call it a memoir of ideas as opposed to a memoir of one's intimate life. But then as I got working on it, I woke up one morning and thought, well, over the last 25 or so years, I may have been one half a step ahead of the crowd, but now I can't even see the tail end of the crowd with what's happening with technology. And I literally took a year sabbatical and did nothing but read. And among other things, there's a quote in the book from an Oxford study that says 50% of white-collar jobs in the U.S. are in danger relative to AI over the next 20 years, and that includes lawyers and doctors, not just backroom people in an insurance company. And so, I decided that the stuff we had talked about from the beginning, and you and I will doubtless continue to go on this, the best defense against artificial intelligence is excellence. And moreover, there's this thing I do in the book called excellence is not a mountain to climb. Excellence is not an aspiration. Excellence is the next 5 minutes. And the way you stand out is to do something cool, fabulous, memorable in the next 5 minutes. I'm not a practitioner of Zen Buddhism. I'm a lousy meditator. So it's not live in the moment, but it is live in the moment. And the real one-liner I use relative to that, which I feel so passionately about, is excellence is your next email. All of who you are as a human being is expressed in the next thing you do. And in terms of thoughtfulness, et cetera, it can show through like a spotlight in a 3-line email, or you can write one of those damn things that just says, get your butt in gear, come into my office. What I can do when I mean get your butt in gear, come to my office, is I could say, look, it'd be really cool if you and I could have a chat. If you get a break from what you're doing, which I know is important, could you stop by the office? That's a totally different relationship with you. I mean, there's something cute, I suppose, about get your butt in gear and get into my office, but it's a disrespectful remark. And even though to you that's just slang, to somebody who is really pretty unempowered, like a 24-year-old who just got here from university, or somebody who's running the housekeeping department in a hotel, that's treating you like crap, frankly. And I really believe the telltales are the next 5 minutes. And so, excellence to me is the best defense against artificial intelligence for at least the next few years. I don't know what happens 20 years from now, but the good news is 20 years from now is 20 years from now. And you and I have got to, for starters, try to do our best in something small relative to the planet like this show, because the only thing in my life right now is looking at you and this show. That's it. I'm 75. It's taken me 75 years and 4 months to get on your show. And so this is I'm not trying to suck up. This is the entire ball game for me. All I've got in my entire life, not even my wife and kids, is this. And that's the definition of excellence to me. Working as hard at the things I care about in these few minutes we have together as anything I've ever done.
Yeah, I think that's a great reminder, Tom, for all of us to really be in the present and really be here. I mean, the power of mindfulness is just the power in the moment. And I think you talk about that, right? If that's your excellence, if that's where your focus has got to be, like you said, right here, we're not farting around, we're not looking on Google, we're right here, man. And I think that does make a big difference. So why don't
I interrupt again and tell you one little story, which is classic of that, because actually I kind of almost repeated it this morning. So I fly into BWI, Baltimore Washington International, a couple of years ago. I'm renting a car. Car rental there is a quarter of a mile from the airport, and so you take a bus. And this is 7 in the morning. So a bus comes by. I'm standing there with my bags and stuff, and the door opens, and there's a guy driving the bus, obviously. And I said what maybe you would say. I said, "Is this the bus to the rental car area?" And this guy, with one of the great smiles in history, looks at me and he said, "Don't we usually begin conversations like this with, 'How are you this morning?'" I felt 1/8 of an inch tall, and I gave him a hug because it was a great reminder for the whole day. But that's the game, really. That's the beginning, the middle, and the end of the game. When I walk into the office, I just read something and retweeted it to the world, and I've forgotten what it was, but the top line was, the most important 2 words in the world if you're a boss is good morning. When you walk into the place, even if it's a rough day or what have you. And I think that's right. Good morning is not a tactic. It is strategy. It is corporate culture. That's the essence of it.
Wow. Good morning is a strategy. I love that, Tom. I mean, that's so right on, whether you're a leader or whether you're a person about to get customer service. I mean, that's the big thing, right? I mean, you can totally be transactional, and then you're going to get transactional service. But if you're there, you're going to get transformational service. You're going to be empowered.
Well, let me tell you my favorite sentence about that you trigger, in part because I'm doing this from a hotel room, is I think very highly of the Ritz-Carlton, and they continue over time to do a pretty good job. But their credo, which I just love, is ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And the simple fact is, in the average hotel, the average housekeeper, who is probably a single mom with 2 kids working 3 jobs, is not treated like a lady. And it sounds like words, and if you didn't live it, it is just words. But that's incredibly potent. Ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. It is my favorite corporate credo, if that's what it is, that really is around. But that is the key. And and the other part of it, which a lot of people who are watching us know, is the hard statistics show, I believe, that housekeepers actually have more face-to-face contact with guests than any other group of people, certainly the hotel manager.
Wow. That's so interesting. So, I would bet that's true, because between the hallway chatter and the fact that you have to walk past them, the fact that they're cleaning the hotel, and the fact that, they're doing something somewhere, that makes so much sense. I mean, even the front desk clerk, once we check in, we don't think about them again.
Can I just add one thing to this that may not be appropriate, but I will? Okay, so that housekeeper, right? She's that single mom with 2 kids working 3 jobs. One of the things I always do, I am a boy, and I behave like most boys do. One of the things I always do before I leave the room in the morning is to wipe the pee off the toilet. I figure that no human being on earth should be required to wipe my urine off a toilet. And so I do my best to clean my hotel room for the person who's going to clean my hotel. I think I'm insulting her. It's likely to be a her. I think it's an insult. I mean, presumably you're the same way. We don't always hit the mark. you know, and
That's true.
That's what my wife tells me anyway. But
yeah,
you know, but I think, you know, so my advice this morning, trying to earn my money, which I'm earning on the show, nothing, but it's a nice idea, is boys, you know, wipe it before you leave in the morning.
That's
a respectful thing to that woman. I am not working 2 jobs. I am not an only parent. I am not making minimum wage plus 50 cents. She's the real deal. You and I are by comparison.
Yeah. No, that's a good reminder. And again, that comes back to presence, being aware of that. I mean, sometimes we just need that extra kind of smack in the head that reminds us, Tom, that we have to be more present. So I thank you for that gift. That is a gift. So well, let's talk.
The next time you're in a hotel room, don't thank me for the gift. Wipe your toilet.
That's it. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so do it, right? Don't just take the gift, right? Do something with it. You
want to stand here in front of a screen pontificating. Are you at home right now?
I am. Yep, I'm in my home office.
Yeah, I mean, you can leave for a minute if you want to and give it a wipe so you don't insult your kids and your wife.
Totally, Tom.
I'll handle it while you're away.
I know you will. I have no question about that, my man. So that's funny. So let's talk about a little bit about execution, and then we're going to jump back to customer service, because execution is a big topic in the book, in Excellence Dividend. So talk to me about what does execution mean to you as it pertains to the book?
Well, we're going to stay in the hotel business.
Okay.
The book starts off with a little vignette. Conrad Hilton, who is arguably the greatest hotelier of all time, with Bill Marriott or what have you, was honored near the end of his career at some big deal in New York City. And after a whole bunch of people told stories, the MC ushered him up to the podium and said, "Mr. Hilton, will you tell us your success secrets?" And he squares himself away. He was a lot more gentlemanly looking probably than you and I combined, and looks out at the audience and says, "Remember to tuck the shower curtain into the bathtub." And with that, he turns and leaves. And the way I like to describe it when I'm talking to an audience, and the way I do in the book, is I come to your hotel because of location, 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 and because you hired a fabulous architect, so it's a wonderful structure. But you and I, as the hotel owner, don't make any money from the first transaction. In fact, we lose tons of money because of all the marketing, et cetera. We make the money off of transaction 2 through 22, and the remarks that you and I make on social media that says this is the greatest or not the greatest place in the world. And the reason I come is location, and the reason I come back is a clean shower. And so, that to me, my term or my slang for it is execution is the all important last 95%. And that was our message of in search of excellence. That's my message today. As far as I'm concerned, any idiot can write a strategy, but once again, creating an institution where people are committed to tucking their shower curtains in, or to taking care with the next email, that's execution. Now, I remember there's a line in there. Larry Bosty, who was a GE guy and then ran Allied Signal, wrote a book with the best book title in the history of business books, one word, execution. But in it, he tells this little tiny story. And he said, when I'm interviewing you for an executive job, what do you talk about? Do you talk about strategy? Do you talk about philosophy? Says, do you wander off to all that abstract stuff, or do you talk about the things you accomplished with and through your people? In other words, do you talk about execution, or do you talk about ethereal things? And he said, if they're not obsessed with execution, then they're not for me. And so, chapter 1 in the book is execution. It should have been people, or it should have been excellence, which is chapter 2, or innovation or whatever, but it's got to start with execution. I mean, my favorite line, and I know I'm an old guy, is most people at least know through their history class D-Day and the landing of the Allies in Normandy. And the commanding officer of the U.S. troops was a general by the name of Omar Bradley. And his one-liner or two-liner, which is favorite, is amateurs talk about strategy, professionals talk about logistics. And, you know, at some level, that says it all to me. You've got this beautiful strategy document, but do the guns and the tanks show up at the right place at the right time? And if they don't, excuse my language, your strategy is total bullshit.
Yeah. So how do we make sure of that, Tom? I mean, how do we make sure that we're not just talking in puffery, right? To not just talking about how important it is to clean the toilet and actually cleaning the toilet?
Well, there are a couple things, as you doubtless know, and I do write about this in the book as well. My breakthrough moment, which came in 78 or 79, is when my In Search of Excellence co-author Bob Waterman and I were visiting the president of Hewlett-Packard, which was then a spunky upstart. Alas, it's lost a lot of that. But he told us about the HP way. And right at the center of that was MBWA, or managing by wandering around. And it was like a light bulb went off, and in literally and metaphorically, that's been my guiding principle. And translation of that is, you're the hotel manager. You have 100 problems on your desk. You paid to solve the damn problems. And so, you know, you get to work at dawn, you leave at dusk, and only one thing was missing from your day. You walk around. And the essence of execution is spending time with the people who do the work, spending time with the housekeeper or the front desk staff, and saying things like, you know, what are we doing that's making a mess of your life, you know, that we could undo? There's a, you know, organization I talk about. It was called Commerce Bank in the US. It's Metro Bank in the UK now. And every teller's keyboard has a red button on it. And you push the red button when you come across a process which you know is a pain in the neck to the customer. And it's literally, you know, I'm giving you a hard time and I shouldn't be giving you a hard time. Bing, I press the red button. Maybe I can't do anything about your transaction with me, but later on we assess it. And if you score on the red button score, I think they give you $100 or something like that. So it's got to be MBWA, managing by wandering around every day. That's number one, hanging with the people who do the job. And, you know, if we had a million years, I would say even in 2018, and if you have to, and you're leading a project team with people from 11 countries, and if you have to raise your own personal bank account, get the hell around, visit them, get on a plane once a year and talk to them face to face. So it's hanging out. It is talking about it. It's, you know, you get a PowerPoint presentation in a boardroom. It is 50 slides long. First of all, it ought to be 10, but it's 50 slides long. 48 of those slides are about competitive analysis. 2 of those slides at the end are about to do. And I want that presentation to be, let's suppose it is 50 pages. I want the first 20 pages to be on the strategy, and I want the last 30 pages to be on how we execute this thing. And so it's a, you know, it's execution is in the air. Does every conversation talk about ethereal stuff, or do we talk about what the roadblocks are? I one time said the boss ought to be called the CHRO, which is Chief Hurdle Removal Officer. How do I get things out of your way which allows you to execute at the front better, more efficiently, more effectively, more clever, or what have you? But, you know, you make execution your obsession. And, you know, it's in every conversation. It's in every visit. You know, it's in every customer contact. You know, there are other words that go with that. The big 4 words, first 2 are thank you, and the second 2 are I'm sorry. But it's, you know, just I mean, you know, that in terms of execution, it's the guy who said, don't we begin conversations like this by saying, good, we want our staff to do that so desperately. They're not going to say good morning to the customer unless I, the boss, said good morning to them. It's real simple. We can have some damned mission statement written by a consultant who charges $1 million a second, but unless we've got the ethos of, hey, good morning, and now we'll talk about the problems. But now, I wanted to follow up on that thing that we talked about last night, 3 o'clock when you left. That's not the way to start a morning. You and I, regardless of what's going on in the world, we are wired like the same human beings we were wired. And human beings, social behavior is the essence of who you and I are. That was a long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. That's the right answer. I like that. And I think that's so important. You said a couple things there that are really important. So one, you mentioned the execution words of thank you and I'm sorry, which I think are so often overlooked. The power of the human-to-human connection, starting with good morning instead of talking about what you want. In every email, in every interaction, starting there, I think that's excellent reminder. And then I really like your stress on where leaders need to focus, and that is by managing by walking around and recognizing that their job is to remove obstacles, right? To remove obstacles and not just, to espouse thought leadership and try to be the smartest person in the room.
Absolutely. I mean, the winning hand is to be the dumbest person in the room. Literally, I had a mentor one time, and I had my first mentor at McKinsey and Company when I was there, and add your IQ and my IQ and multiply by 2, and we're getting close to his IQ. So he was smarter than the two of us combined, but he was the master of dumb questions in the best sense of that word. He would just dig in, and unless he really understood, what you were saying, he didn't move on. And it was just, getting to the heart of the matter and so on is really key.
Awesome. So, Tom, why don't more leaders do that? Why aren't more leaders willing to, subsume themselves and say, hey, Tom, I don't understand that. Can you explain that more?
Well, I can explain it, first of all, in 3 words. I don't know. There is nothing in this book or any other book which requires an MBA or a degree in mathematics, which may be the problem. It ain't sexy. It ain't complicated. And I wish I could plug a book, but I don't remember the title, unfortunately. But somebody was talking about, a consultant was sitting in with the CEO on presentations, and everybody was talking about the good stuff that we believe in, treating your people well, paying attention to your customer, and so on. And so the author looks over at the CEO, and he said, why don't other CEOs talk about this stuff? And the CEO looked at him and smiled, and he said, I sometimes think they're embarrassed because it's not sexy enough. It's not complicated enough. It's the basic. I don't know. I mean, part of it, and I'm really clear on this, and I already said this to you in a way, is you think you were hired to solve problems, and so you sit in your office and solve problems. I can't criticize you for that because it's true. But at the end of the day, you never got out and wandered around. And I think among other things, it takes, and I hate this answer because everybody gives it, incredible self-discipline. You've got to get out of the office. You've got to talk to the folks. You've got to, I had a boss I worked for. I spent a couple of years in the White House in the 70s, and he was an incredibly smart guy. And we worked long hours. Every evening, Walter would go into his office and shut the door and spend the last half hour of the day writing thank you notes. They were not thank you notes to congressmen. They were thank you notes to the congressman's administrative assistant, age 24, who just graduated from Brown University, who got him the appointment with the congressman, who is a busy guy. And we talk in the book about Doug Conan, who was the CEO of Campbell Soup for 10 years, and who wrote 30,000 handwritten thank you notes in 10 years. All this, I'm just BSing you and beating around because I don't know. It's nothing complicated. If people are turned on, they will do incredible work. if I have this, inappropriate phrase linguistically in the book, if you work your one ass off helping the 10 people who report to you, they will work their 10 asses off making you a hero. And, it's a sailor's language line. I'm an old sailor. What can I do? It's a sailor's language line, but it's true. And there's this book that I quote and I love it. It's written by a couple of Swedes. They actually bought a hotel. They decided consulting wasn't enough. We got to try it. And it's called Hostmanship, Hostmanship. And they say the leader is a host to his or her employees. And, they started their ownership thing by having what they called a consideration renovation. And it wasn't to repaint the customer rooms. It was to repaint the employee break rooms and so on. Because they said, what's going to make this hotel successful? Employees who are turned on and happy. So how do we make them happy? And they said, who wants to work in a hotel where it has a credo that says, put the customers first? They want to work in a hotel, or you as a customer want to be in a hotel where there's an incredibly thoughtful, caring interaction with the employee, which is only going to happen if you treat the employee with respect. I mean, the first thing I say to hotel managers always is show me your employee entrance. The employees ought to enter through the front door like everybody else, but if not, I want that employee entrance to be just as fancy with the same columns and the same paint job as the customer entrance, because they are the ones whose service makes our service to the customer as good or as bad as it may end up being.
Wow. So your first focus is always on employees because that helps them focus on the customer.
The inarticulate way, which is grammatically incorrect that I put it, is if you want to put the customer first, you must put the person who serves the customer more first. And there's a book that, again, well, I think I will get the title right. It's called Putting the Patient Second. And it says, with all the regulations and stuff, we beat the heck out of frontline employees in hospitals. So how can we expect them to have a great attitude toward their patients? And if we want them to have a great attitude toward their patients, first of all, they got to feel good about themselves and the job.
Brilliant. So good. And yet, truly, Tom, sounds so commonsensical as to be ridiculous that we don't do it. And yet often we don't. We miss these things. We overlook them.
Yeah. And I think we've got to pay attention. I hate the word coach in many ways because everybody who wants to hangs a sign up that says I'm a coach, but somebody who gives you straight feedback. Somebody who's really an old pal or somebody you trust, and you just ran a meeting and afterwards they say, you never shut your damn mouth for 30 minutes. There was this research that was done that was fabulous. And, good social psychological research with people checking boxes or using their devices or what have you, recording conversations. And at the end of the meeting, they asked the boss, how many times did you interrupt and how many times were you interrupted? And the boss said, well, as I recall, and I'm more or less accurate, well, I admit that 2 or 3 times I interrupted, but God, they must have interrupted me 15 times. Well, we have the statistics, brother. You interrupted 15 times and they interrupted you 2. But in your heart, you really think you didn't interrupt. And you need that feedback or some equivalent thereof. Maybe you need somebody, sitting next to you who's with a little pencil or clicking on their handheld device, recording the number of times you interrupt versus being interrupted. And that's huge. Yeah. Are you a listener or are you a talker? And if you're a boss, you're paid to listen.
Wow. That's a great reminder, Tom, that bosses are paid to listen. So we have one comment here, just a little bit of affirmation here from Kevin Farashi O'Malley, who says, put the people who serve your customers first.
I'm having some audio problems right now, and we got to work on those.
Okay. Well, we're almost done, Tom. It's no problem. So we'll be okay. So Kevin Farashi O'Malley says, put the people who serve your customer first.
We are dead in the water over audio on my end.
Okay. So no problem. No problem. So today we talked with Tom Peters about the new book, The Excellence Dividend. You can get a link and pick up a copy of the book in the comments. Tom has been very gracious with us here today. Guess we got some technical challenges, Tom. So are you back, or do we need to wrap it up on my end?
Well, I guess we're going to have to wrap it up. It's been for me, a fabulous conversation. And you have nailed about 99% of what I was hoping that we could nail. And the only problem is the big problem. It wasn't very intellectual. It was stuff like, don't we usually begin conversations like this with, how are you this morning? I mean, that's the full extent of the intellectual power of the things that I have said, which required my engineering degree from Cornell and my MBA at Stanford. Without those 2 degrees, I would have never learned how to say. Actually, the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, and this was my most significant act of genius, choosing my mother correctly. I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, and in days when Annapolis was in the deep South, and there were all sorts of problems associated with that. If you were born in 42, the segregation was awful and so on. But one thing Southerners are good at, and that she was good at, was she taught me good manners. And, good manners is a good word for CEOs, for frontline people, and it's the essence of human interaction. And in some ways, I have spent, the last 70 years remembering the number of times that my mother slapped me when I didn't say thank you quickly enough, or I'm sorry when I did something rude. And, that is the most invaluable lesson or teaching moments of my entire life. And just like that CEO who said, I don't know why they don't do it. Maybe they're just embarrassed because it's too simple.
Wow. That well could be, Tom. So that's great. People want to read your book. The book is called The Excellence Dividend. It is fantastic. It comes out on April 3rd. Tom, it's been just a pleasure to talk to you today. I'm so grateful for the time you took, for playing with the technology, and for writing this awesome book. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much for the time. I really have enjoyed it. I don't say that unless I enjoyed something.
Thank you. Well, I'm so glad. I hope everybody picks up a copy of the book. Book will be out very soon. It's called The Excellence Dividend. You can also learn more about Tom